I chose the title of the tip of the iceberg because there's a lot of categories that we're not dealing with, and they could cause problems. We have problems with too many loans underwater that we haven't dealt with. All the loan modification programs have tried to kick the can down the road, but they really haven't solved it, and there'll be a day of reckoning for that. And this report talks about that and says, okay, there'll be choices that the government has to make. And if they make this choice, it'll go one way. If they make another choice, it'll go another. Problems like ever-growing federal deficit. They just came out with a federal budget, and it was very large. And the federal deficit is a chapter that is kind of scary when you look at it. There's a lot of things in the future that are we already know they're going to get more and larger. And we have to deal with that as a country. Those have ramifications for real estate, and we'll take a look at that. Problems like the future cost of Social Security and Medicare, that's a very big item. And we'll probably have to realize that some of those promises that were made to us are not going to be kept. And as real estate investors, we can fix that ourselves. We don't need to rely on anybody. We also have problems, perhaps, but not closing enough banks and possibly repeating the mistakes that caused the lost decade for Japan. So over the last 6 months, I've studied that issue. Why did Japan have 20 years of non-growth? And are we, in fact, making some of those same mistakes? Just like Alan Greenspan discovered that things work differently than he thought, I took another look at every category of chart and re-examined how I thought things worked. To my surprise, I discovered that almost all the categories can be manipulated by government policies to have different outcomes. Example, affordability. It was my belief that when California reached 17% affordability, prices stalled, and that was the end of a boom. Then I have to add the word unless you have a lending policy in place that allows borrowers to misstate their income, and then the prices can move forward. Now that we have affordability in a very high percentage, a lot of people can buy a home, but there's a problem with some other restrictive lending policies that are now in place. Fannie Mae has just come in and said that we'll now only allow a 45% back-end ratio, and therefore this affordability number being very high is still got a problem because of government policies changing who can qualify and who can't. So the tip of the iceberg report takes apart every category chart that we have, and the ones that I thought were a blueprint, I want to make sure that they're accurate. And if there's a way to manipulate it, we talk about it in this report and tell you what to look for and how that changes the end result. I was watching a documentary on the U.S. auto worker, and they were closing a factory. And this one auto worker said something that really disturbed me. He said, "I've lived a better life than my dad, but my grandson will live less of a life than me." And I just don't want that to be true. And I don't believe it has to be true. The tip of the iceberg is also a realization that we have yet to reach the potential of America. Joseph A. Schumpeter is an Austrian economist. He coined the phrase creative destruction. Creative destruction, the process of transformation that accompanies radical innovation. Innovation by entrepreneurs is the force that sustains long-term economic growth, even as it destroys the value of established companies that formerly enjoyed a monopoly. And I think Schumpeter is right. That's America. I recall when I was partners with a gentleman that was the CEO of Amaron, that Amaron sold a plant to China, and they removed the plant piece by piece. And I thought it always was interesting that the reason Amaron wanted to sell the plant was that it was no longer functional to today's standards. There's people that can replicate what we do, but they can't innovate what's next. 25 years ago, I worked for an electrical wholesale company, and I bought them their first fax machine. They thought that would not be necessary. 3 years later, 3 years ago, when you attended the multimillionaire seminar, we bought everyone a video iPod. And the reason we did that is so we could download all the information we wanted to give you. We didn't have to hand you CDs anymore. We could just download it to an iPod, and you could hold what literally was a library before in your hand. That didn't exist before. This last Christmas, I was given a new way to read a book. You don't even have to buy a book anymore. You can download it to this device. Amazing. This last Christmas, I also was beaten in a sport that I'm pretty good at, and that was by a 7-year-old, and the sport was called Wii Bowling. My wife started a cancer treatment yesterday that also didn't exist a few years ago. My point is that we've only seen the tip of the iceberg for our country because of the genius of our people and the freedom to experiment and create. When you come to this event, yeah, we'll have to cover the path from where we are to where we've got to go, and some of it's going to be painful, but I think you're going to like the final destination. Again, my thanks to Sean O'Toole for providing us with incredible information that we just would not have been able to take a look at this micro picture with the accuracy that we now have. My thanks to Aaron Norris, who's worked very hard getting this report ready. We still have some all-nighters to put in, but we're excited about this report, and we're about 40% sold out at this point. We expect that we'll only give this report one time this year. So if you think this information will be valuable, and I can't understand why you wouldn't, we'd look forward to seeing you there. There's been a couple of questions that have been asked, and I'll go ahead and respond to those now. First, there's a statement. It says, my research has shown that has shown that it's completely possible that real estate won't finally bottom until 2014. Hence, the only deals I'll do are flips. Why would we want to buy and hold at this time if prices are likely to grind lower for the years to come? First of all, I think that probably won't be true in all price bands, and that's very important to understand. You have gone through an awful lot of the foreclosures in subprime, which was the lower price band. A lot of the inventory that's coming out now will be in the higher price band. So you can have a very different result depending on the price band. And once again, that's what this report does, is show you the difference. You could have, in Riverside, you could definitely have price increases in the lower price band and very big price damage in anything over 500 grand. Another reason why I might want to buy and hold a property right now is there's a motivated seller called a lender. If I waited till 2014, I bet they're not going to be motivated, so I would have missed my chance to buy at a tremendous discount. Another reason might be financing available. I don't know what interest rates are in 2014, and neither do you, but I do know what they are in 2010. They're a record low. So there's a lot of reasons why I would decide to buy and hold right now. And if I'm buying and holding, somebody's paying me more monthly in rent than my payment, and so I'm netting something every month. And I think most astute real estate investors get around to holding properties that pay them every month. So I would encourage you to re-examine the idea that you're going to wait till 2014. I think you'll miss the buying opportunity of your lifetime.